Hello, welcome to a special online showcase of the Kenya Energy Transition and Investment Plan. The recently ratified Kenya Energy Transition and Investment Plan is a green growth plan that reaffirms the nation's commitment to just and equitable access to sustainable energy for all. Backed by a diverse range of partners, this plan positions Kenya as both a key contributor and beneficiary in the global transition towards net zero future. I am Ann Kiburi, Senior Specialist Energy Transition Coordinator in Kenya. I will be your host for this online showcase of the Kenya Energy Transition and Investment Plan. So, what is the Kenya Energy Transition and Investment Plan? What are its goals and strategies, and what exciting opportunities does it present for both Kenya and potential investors? Let's hear from Damilora Ogunbiyi, Chief Executive Officer and United Nations Secretary General's Special Representative for Sustainable Energy for All and co-chair of UN Energy.
Over the last few months, we've been working hand in hand with the Kenyan government at Sustainable Energy for All to develop the Kenyan Energy Transition and Investment Plan. We're really excited about this because it's about Kenya's kind of clean, green energy future, but it's also a template for the rest of the continent. So we're looking at everything from carbon markets to low carbon technologies to green steel and seeing how it becomes part and parcel of how Kenya develops economically. What is really exciting about the Energy Transition and Investment Plan is we talk about what is needed between now and 2060. That also talks about the funding that's needed and the investments that's needed, but more importantly, the opportunity for Kenyan businesses on the continent, but global businesses to also come and set up in Kenya and really value the vast amount of resources that Kenya brings in terms of human capacity as well, but also in terms of the location it is around the continent, the supply chains it brings, but more importantly, the ease of doing business here. I think Kenya is the exemplar. Kenya's electricity network is already at easily 90% green, and they're looking to be 100% by 2060. That isn't just a continental progress, but it should be global progress. And they're really leading the charge in what does net zero mean, what does a clean energy transition mean, but more importantly, the opportunities of green growth. And that's why we're so excited with SE4 to be helping Kenya develop the Energy Transition and Investment Plan, but also the investments that will follow this plan. So we see this as a hand-in-hand partnership for the next few years. We have the whole of the UN backing us on this journey, and we're just really excited to amplify Kenya's leadership in the green space.
Kenya's gradual shift to clean energy prioritizes economic stability, reliable energy, and sustainable development. This approach creates jobs, enhances energy security, improves public health, and protects the environment. It also fosters technological advancement, international collaborations, and social equity. To ensure nobody is left behind, this transition must be inclusive, ensuring affordable access to clean energy for all communities, particularly those in rural and underserved areas. Our next speaker is Dr. Rajiv Shah, President of the Rockefeller Foundation, to tell us why a just and equitable energy transition is the right bet for people and for the planet.
Jambo. Hello, everyone. I was in Nairobi just a few weeks ago, where I met with President Ruto to discuss how we can work together to address the most challenging issue Kenya, Africa, and the world are facing: climate change. Unfortunately, Africans are on the front lines of this climate crisis, even though they have contributed the least to this crisis. Fortunately, Africans are emerging as climate champions. We saw it during the African Climate Summit in Nairobi, where for the first time, all AU member states came together to discuss climate change. We saw it in the Nairobi Declaration, where leaders from those states committed to meaningful actions that will stimulate green growth across the continent. And we see it in Kenya's Energy Transition and Investment Plan, which will accelerate an energy transition that can attract investment and support inclusive economic growth. We congratulate the government of Kenya and SE4All on the launch of this important plan. We share your goals of developing and deploying climate solutions while advancing human opportunity. That's why we, along with our partners at SE for All and a dozen other organizations, launched the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, which is accelerating just energy transitions across Africa and around the world. And it's why the Rockefeller Foundation is committed to bringing the world together to address climate change in a more concerted, effective manner. Our ultimate goal is to ensure everyone everywhere has the opportunity to be healthy, empowered, nourished, secure, and free. We're grateful that you share those goals, and we look forward to working together to achieve them. Thank you for your commitment and your leadership, and congratulations again on this incredible accomplishment.
Kenya has chosen an orderly energy transition, gradually shifting from fossil fuels to clean energy. This approach minimizes economic disruption, ensures a stable energy supply, and supports sustainable development. It aims to create up to 500,000 jobs, enhance energy security, improve public health, and protect the environment. To achieve this, Kenya works with development partners to secure investments and technical assistance for renewable energy projects, grid infrastructure, and energy efficiency programs. We turn now to Stephen Jackson, UN Resident Coordinator in Kenya, to tell us more about how development partners are working with Kenya to support a just and inclusive energy transition for all.
Kenya is already at more than 90% renewable electricity generation, but the vision in the energy transition and investment plan is to go a great deal further, to go net zero in the coming decades, and to see Kenya develop jobs, industrialization in a way that not only doesn't adversely impact the climate, but actually offers opportunity to address the climate emergency. The energy transition and investment plan is also about the need to crowd in investment to accomplish exactly that. It will require very substantial investment, but that investment will be profit-making, will deliver economic opportunity, and will deliver green jobs for this proud country. Kenya and Africa are not only central to the climate debate, they're actually key and critical to finding solutions to save the planet. That's the vision of the energy transition and investment plan. Africa and Kenya as provider of solutions that require financing and investment at scale that can service the triple bottom line, that can realize economic profit, social benefit, and good for the climate. Kenya is also uniquely placed within the region. Kenya sits on a coastline. It sits literally at a global crossroads, a crossroads between the vast economic opportunity of East and Central and the Horn of Africa on the one hand, and the enormous markets in the Gulf, in the Far East, in South Asia, Southeast Asia, and in China. So Kenya has an extraordinary opportunity on the one hand to be a provider of goods and services, particularly in the energy sector, to Central, Eastern, and the Horn of Africa, and on the other hand, an entrepot through which green goods can flow in both directions. But it is also the role of United Nations Kenya is straightforward. We're here to support that extraordinary level of ambition. So the entire energies of a United Nations country team in Kenya, all of our different agencies, funds and programs, are bent towards helping to carry forward this extraordinary vision of green growth and the climate transition for a country like Kenya, still on the front lines of the impact of the climate emergency. We've had a drought over the last 3 years, threatening the lives and livelihoods of almost 6 million Kenyans, a drought like we've never seen before. But on the other hand, this incredible opportunity as well to make money and to make a difference at the same time out of the energy transition. And that's our job in UN Kenya, to help carry forward this energy transition and investment plan, and to help carry forward the vision of President Ruto, his government, the Kenyan people, and of the African continent.
Kenya needs over $600 billion for its energy transition, with 90% going to power and transport sectors. Most funding will come from private sector, with guarantees and insurance making the project more attractive to investors. Next is Anthony Mwangi, the former Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. He tells us more about how Kenya is setting the bar for other developing nations while attracting investment in clean energy.
So let's first look at, in a nutshell, what green manufacturing actually means. This means maximizing efficiency in production and minimizing, while you do that, you minimize the impact to environment from many fronts. CAM has what we call the Center for Energy Efficiency, Green Growth, and Circular Economy. We're actually a center of excellence when it comes to energy efficiency. We've been doing this on behalf of the government for the last 18 years. We've been able to do massive audits and bring efficiency from the basic level to very advanced. Now we are actually adding efficiency on water and also waste management. So green manufacturing is actually driving that efficiency and minimizing the impact. And manufacturing in Kenya, when we talk about contribution to GDP at 7.8%, that is close to over R1 trillion shillings. But outside public sector, manufacturing has the highest number of waged employment at 352,000, which now we are looking at expanding that to 20, or contribution to GDP from 7.8 to 20%. We create over 1 million jobs, which is possible. We've mapped all the value chains. We also need now to have a very serious look at how we produce. Energy efficiency is one of them, and we are driving that very, very strongly. We've been challenged by the minister or the CS for energy to multiply that tenfold, and we're going to do that this year. But as we do that now, we also start putting our much more effort on sustainable water use, because we are a water scarce country. We also need to put a keen eye on waste management. How do we reduce the waste generation? And when we generate that waste, how do we manage that waste? CAM has incubated producer responsibility organizations like PACPRO and KEPRO. And we're looking at even doing much more, because we need to expand that space to be able to capture all that. All these efforts are towards green manufacturing. But as we do that also, because some of these have been incremental efforts, we need also to look at how to completely transform this. What are the new technologies that we are going to use? If you look at solar technology today, we need to now defy physics and come with really turnkey solutions that have not been found before. Is it green hydrogen? What are the other sources? What about captive power that you can be able to produce in-house with, and you're sustainable by using either solar, green hydrogen, or any other source of energy? So, and I think that will again converge as we also drive other ways of producing using 3D printing, that is additive manufacturing technology, as opposed to currently what we do as extractive manufacturing. How do we use the technology, tech for the industrial revolution? How do we employ robotics? How do we get into AI? How do we introduce data analytics, predictive analytics to our production facilities? All this will culminate in making manufacturing more efficient and also reduce the impact to environment. And we're leading that conversation. And as manufacturers, we have a huge play in making sure that we lead this conversation to green manufacturing. And we intend to take all the efforts as CAM to be able to be the thought leader in this subject. So combine new sources of energy, clean tech, we combine with green growth and circular economy. But more importantly, and we have aligned this to our pillars, global competitiveness. How do we become more efficient? How do we use technology? Number 2, agriculture for industry. How do we start dealing with the transportation? Because we import a lot of raw materials, including some of them in agriculture. We've been importing maize, soybean. How do we work on new value chains to localize this and minimize the transportation need for transportation by sea? We have export, and as we talk about export, we have seen our customers in mature markets like EU and the US demanding that they need to know how goods are produced. We are moving towards net zero emission in the EU. And that really these conversations are driven by consumers. We must transition our industries, our factories to net zero. And it's not a matter of choice. It's something that we must do.
Supported by partners such as Sustainable Energy for All, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, Kenya is accelerating its transition to clean energy by investing in renewable energy infrastructure, developing innovative financing mechanisms, and implementing policies that will promote energy efficiency and sustainable practices. This collaborative effort not only addresses climate change, but also fosters economic growth and improves the quality of life for its citizens. Let's now hear from Joseph Nganga, Interim CEO of the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet.
Kenya, with its over 90% renewable energy, stands at an incredible opportunity to unlock a green growth path towards economic development, but also decarbonizing not just the country, but also globally. But to achieve that, we must work with very capable partners who are action-oriented, who seek to address the challenges on the continent and globally in a very efficient, but also technically correct way. Sustainable Energy for All has demonstrated that it has the ability to move quickly, to take risks, to pilot new opportunities and support governments. And the Energy Transition and Investment Plan in Kenya is such an example. On the continent, if we're going to achieve our objectives, if we're going to get on a sustainable path towards growth, we have to move quickly. We have to be strategic. We have to be responsive to our host governments. We must tailor what we do to address our government's priorities and not create our own projects and sell them to government. And if we talk about the energy access agenda, Sustainable Energy for All has championed strongly the need for focusing on energy access in order to drive development on the continent, but also has championed very, very strongly the energy transition, but a just energy transition with a focus on communities. And what that office has done, among other things, is create things like solar for mini-grids, but also solar for markets, because the people who are benefiting are local communities, they are local business people in the market who are transitioning from diesel generators to solar-powered electrification. If you look at the cost of equipment, solar panels, hydropower, even things like wind, the cost of implementing a new power plant is significantly high. The timelines are significantly long. And yet in today's world, with anything from LED lights to electric pressure cookers to e-mobility, you can really leverage the kilowatt hours you have today to get a lot more out of them and therefore save on investing in new generation, while also providing returns to investors and therefore a much more attractive growth path for our economies. So energy efficiency is crucial to the continent. Every kilowatt hour has a cost to generate, to transmit, and to consume. And so the less you need in order to achieve an outcome, whether it's making dinner or it's transportation or it's industrialization, the lower the cost to the consumer or to the industry, and therefore the better for the economy. And so energy efficiency must be at the heart of all the work that we do. And I've seen that with Sustainable Energy for All, where energy efficiency is at the heart of everything that the organization thinks about.
Involving youth in this process is crucial for ensuring the sustainability and long-term success of the transition. By engaging young people in education and training programs focused on renewable energy, Kenya is nurturing a skilled workforce for the future. Additionally, empowering the youth fosters a sense of ownership and inclusivity in energy transition, ensuring that the benefits are shared equitably across generations. Let's hear more from Cherop Soy, former SDG 7 Youth Ambassador for the Pan-African region at Sustainable Energy for All.
It is no secret that Kenya and Africa in general have abundant natural resources that have the potential to run our energy sectors. But the gaps are still evident. There are millions without access to electricity and billions without access to clean cooking technologies. Africa is the youngest continent and will continue to be the youngest continent in the next couple of years, and this provides for a resourceful and innovative human capital that must be included in the Energy Transition and Investment Plan. This traineeship program will be essential to the Energy Transition and Investment Plan, as well as SE for All activities in Kenya, as it will take advantage of the human resource and capital by building the capacity of young people and equipping them with the technical expertise to address the challenges and the gaps that the energy sector is currently facing.
Kenya has chosen an orderly energy transition, gradually shifting from fossil fuels to clean energy. This approach minimizes economic disruption, ensures a stable energy supply, and supports sustainable development. It aims to create jobs, enhance energy security, improve public health, and protect the environment. Ali Mohammed is our next speaker. He is the chairperson of the African Group of Negotiators and Special Climate Envoy for Kenya. Ali will tell us more about what Kenya is doing to prepare for a net zero future.
Kenya is the environment capital of the world. As we know, we are the home of the United Nations Environment Program. We are home to multiple intergovernmental agencies dealing with the environment, as well as international non-governmental organizations dealing with the environment. We are a leader in many aspects of environment. And His Excellency President William Samoei Ruto is also the chair of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change. So all this enable Kenya to become and to be the leader on environment matters for Africa and beyond. In the past, the framing of climate discourse in the continent of Africa has largely been the narrative of victimhood, which has not led to any significant investments and support. We realized that narrative needed to be changed, and His Excellency President William Ruto is leading in the change of that narrative. He started it in Sharm el-Sheikh when he spoke for the continent of Africa in the COP27. And the essence is really to position the African continent's enormous abundant resources that, if scaled, can become a bigger contribution to the world's challenges on climate change and attract the necessary investments for the continent. The resources of Africa that have the potential to contribute to the global climate challenge have not been tapped in the past. In Kenya, for example, we have 92% of our energy is green energy. Many other parts of the continent have enormous potential of tapping into the renewable energy potentials, whether it is the solar potential, the wind potential, the hydro potential, and even the geothermal for several countries. If these are tapped well with the right investments, Africa, Kenya and the rest of Africa can become the hub for energy-intensive industrialization for the world, thereby reducing the emissions, not just for ourselves, but contributing to the emission reductions that the world so dearly needs. We have the potential to provide green, clean energy that can contribute to the entire world's decarbonization if well resourced. So what Kenya is saying, and the rest of the continent is saying, is we are open for investment. We are open for business. We have resources that require the right investments that can be scaled to help ourselves and the rest of the world to become green at scale and with the necessary speed. And yes, Africa is ready. The leadership of Africa have demonstrated in several occasions their willingness and readiness to join and to lead from the front the transformation towards green, climate positive growth for Africa and for the world. I think it is important to emphasize the fact that Africa, with the fastest growing population, with the youngest workforce, with the richest natural resources of the world, from the mineral resources to the renewable energy resources to the land mass that can lead to productive food productions. All this combined makes this continent the continent of the future. And with a leadership that is ready and willing to reach out, to partner with the world, Africa is saying we are open for business, we are extending a friendly hand to address a common global problem collectively with all the rest. Private sector of Africa, the non-state actors of Africa, the youth of Africa, the civil society of Africa, these are the people who are contributing to the narrative change, contributing to the transformation that Africa needs. The youth of Africa are extremely engaged, and they continue to enhance the engagements. And President William Ruto is very committed to supporting the youth agenda and the youth engagement in the development of the country. And as chair of Climate Change for Africa and the AU, also contribution to the development of the entire continent and encouraging the youth and the civil society of Africa and non-state actors in the broader sense, from the private sector to the academia to the researchers, to partake in the transformation that is necessary for the continent towards a green, climate-positive growth.
The main goal of the Energy Transition and Investment Plan is to draw investments, ensure fair transitions for all, and support Kenya's fast economic growth. It aims for net zero emissions by 2050 by developing low-carbon technologies. To drive the transition, the plan proposes the adoption of key technologies including renewable energy, energy storage, electric vehicles, hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, and clean cooking technologies. William Asiko is the Vice President for Africa at the Rockefeller Foundation, and he has this to say.
The Kenya Energy Transition and Investment Plan is an important document, but it's not just a document. It's a plan to take control of the issues that are being caused by climate change, but that we ourselves did not cause here in Africa. And I think what this strategy does is it gives Kenya a chance to control the things that it does. So it does give me great pleasure to congratulate the government of Kenya for launching this strategy, an important document that will definitely put Kenya in the driving seat as it develops its economy and fights the effects of climate change. Africa is facing a polycrisis, and Kenya is definitely included in that. Today, we are seeing the effects of climate change. We are seeing high inflation. We're seeing the high cost of food caused by supply chain issues. We're seeing high debt, and we're seeing a declining exchange rate for most African countries. All these are issues outside our control. What the Kenya Energy Transition and Investment Strategy does is it gives us an opportunity to take control of the things that we do control. What Kenya does control is how it can attract investment into its natural resources. We can address supply chain issues by doing things around agriculture, irrigation, to fight the uncertainty around rainfall. So one of the things that I really believe that has huge potential for Africa and for Kenya specifically is the area of carbon markets. Carbon markets offer a new financing instrument that will allow African governments as well as Kenya to attract investment from the private sector, but also to empower communities by having them give an opportunity to share in the proceeds from the sale of carbon credits. Carbon credits are a source of capital for government to drive development. They also assist the government in fighting the effects of climate change as we increase the amount of carbon being extracted from the environment through increasing carbon credit projects. So African carbon markets are an important source of finance for African countries, but also especially for Kenya. Today, there is huge potential to increase the availability of carbon credits on the global markets. And today, Africa can be the leader in developing African carbon market projects that will benefit countries by raising capital, attract investment, but also benefit communities by giving them an opportunity to share in the revenues that arise from the sale of carbon credits. So in conclusion, let me just say that African carbon markets offer an immense opportunity for African countries to increase the availability of development capital, but as well as private sector investment. We have a collective duty as government, as philanthropy, as the private sector, to work together to make African carbon markets work. The African Carbon Markets Initiative is doing just that. It's a platform that brings together all the stakeholders across the carbon markets value chain, and we are proud to be associated with this initiative.
The Kenya Energy Transition and Investment Plan was developed by the Ministry of Energy with support from Sustainable Energy for All at the request of the Kenyan government. The country's energy transition is a tremendous opportunity to create new economic activity, leading to job creation. In fact, the plan highlights a potential for 500,000 net new jobs by 2050. Our next speaker is Victor Ogalo, Deputy Chief Executive Officer at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. He will share valuable insights on how Kenya's private sector is harnessing technology to accelerate the energy transition.
We have demonstrated as a country that we do not only talk about green growth or green energy, we've demonstrated it. 90% of our energy is actually from renewable. These are sources like geothermal, biomass, solar, hydro, and wind. Much of renewable energy is green, but geothermal, there are environmental questions around the process of drilling it. So the technology for drilling, so that it doesn't hurt the environment, is what needs to be cured to make it green. So that has already been covered. Biomass, of course, getting it from plant waste, animal waste, and then you turn it. That process of turning it is what we as development conscious, sustainability conscious organization are looking at, that the process of turning it into energy ought to be green. The importance of all this is if you rely a lot more on fossil fuels, there are potential disruptions, because then you cannot claim sustainability and independence. So by having a lot of green energy, you're democratizing energy, since it can be produced locally, and most of the solar, wind can be produced within the locations where those sources are. And so you are also decentralizing the production of energy even into the communities. And that's very, very important to stabilize even global prices, to stabilize access. So green energy is the best way to go. It safeguards your access, it stabilizes global prices, but it's not only good for the planet, it's also good for creating more jobs and securing the future for our generations to come. And within Kenya, of course, we have helped to develop the National Climate Change Action Plan. We've also developed Kenya's private sector strategy on climate change, which is a commitment by the private sector to certain actions to ensure that our actions within our enterprises live up to the promise and our aspirations on reducing the climate footprint of our activities. And we also have a unit called Climate Business Information Network, which we use to create more awareness, to be our knowledge repository for our members. And we hope we can secure the future, not just for businesses, but also for our generations to come. As the conversation towards sustainability started, a lot of businesses had invested with what we call brown energy. And so to green those systems, to turn them from being brown technologies into green technologies sometimes take time, because there's a lot of investment that companies have already put into place. And maybe the transition may be a bit costly. And so we are in conversations with the government to offer certain incentives. And these incentives may not just be monetary. They could be support towards taxation. If I'm importing a technology that is green to replace my brown technology, at least there ought to be certain incentives to do that. There could also be policy incentives, for instance, that we are asking government to consider. And we're also asking for a little more time, although our wish is to ensure that by 2030 we are completely compliant. We are also asking investors to consider those industries that are making a lot of efforts to provide credit, to provide, of course, also the global marketplace to consider companies that have been audited to be compliant with environmental, social, and governance principles, ESG. And I think lastly, as we sprint towards Sustainable Development Goals of 2030, we are looking to double or triple our efforts because it's just 7 years towards 2030. And the SDG number 7 on green growth and green energy is something that we really want to ensure that we have completely met that by 2030.
Expanding access to affordable and sustainable energy for all can alleviate poverty and improve livelihoods, particularly in underserved communities. Moreover, a just and equitable transition empowers communities through decentralized energy systems, fostering innovation and technological advancements while mitigating climate change and promoting global cooperation for a sustainable future. Now we are joined by Amina J. Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations and Chair of the United Nations Sustainable Development Group.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a real pleasure to join you today for the launch of the Kenyan government's Energy Transition and Investment Plan. Kenya has been at the forefront of climate action, hosting the first Africa Climate Summit in September, resulting in the Nairobi Declaration on Climate Change, and a call to action to the international community to urgently advance efforts to reduce emissions and deliver on the Paris Agreement. The Kenyan Energy Transition and Investment Plan, developed jointly between the Government of Kenya and Sustainable Energy for All, demonstrates unprecedented opportunities to catalyze a growth trajectory to pave the way for a net zero CO2 emissions future by 2050 through renewable energy and energy efficiency. Kenya's Net Zero 2050 pathways will deliver multiple benefits across a range of public policy objectives. The plan also creates $40 billion of near-term investment opportunities by 2050, attracting the needed investments while ensuring a just, equitable, and resilient transition. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, collective action is needed for both development and climate action. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is our universal blueprint to transform our world with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals as our guide and a core promise to leave no one behind. Through a clean energy transition, countries like Kenya can increase economic opportunities, generate greener jobs, provide equitable gender responses, improve education, and better equip healthcare systems. I would like to commend the Government of Kenya for its commitment to the 2030 Agenda and Agenda 2063, and congratulate the people of Kenya for this important milestone. I encourage all countries to create their own energy transition plans and also urge investors and funders to provide the necessary financing to accelerate these transition plans. We must all do our part to achieve the just and equitable energy future that the world deserves. Together, we can advance our shared vision and build a world of prosperity, dignity, and opportunity for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Amina, and thank you to all our speakers for your inspiring words. As we've seen today, Kenya's energy transition journey is well underway, and it is exciting to see so many committed partners rallying behind the new Energy Transition and Investment Plan as a roadmap for achieving energy, climate, and development goals. That's the end of today's showcase. Thank you for joining us.